We're doing a mock draft. We're drafting the entire first round, all 32 teams. And today's scenario, to make this mock draft different, I'm drafting the entire NFC. I'm allowing the computer to do the AFC. That way, we have some players to react to, some guys falling down the board, some decisions to make that might be a little bit different. If you're new here, we like to do a lot of mock drafts. We like to think outside the box, think about how players could fall, how things can change, and see how things could look as we prepare for the NFL draft. What you need to do right now is click that subscribe button. We're going to get you ready for the NFL draft. We're going to get you ready for your Dynasty rookie drafts and everything else. Click that button. Stop missing out. We're starting off with this mock draft. I'm drafting the NFC. PFF is drafting the AFC. Let's see what happens here. And I did not adjust the settings, so they should be average, and they should be pretty on par. So the first two picks off the board here to react to. Cam Ward off the board, Travis Hunter to the Browns. The Giants are on the clock. So two scenarios could happen here. Shedeur Sanders is not being batted as a first-round pick, and he's going to fall. That could happen in this scenario. Or the Giants step up. They get a tackle, they go edge, they pick up another prominent prospect that's not Shedeur Sanders. However, we're looking at this team, they got a quarterback issue, and they may not be at a position where they can pick up another quarterback at this spot. However, if the NFL grades Shedeur Sanders as not a first rounder, then they're going somewhere else. I think in this mock, should we see how far Shedeur Sanders falls? Because he's going to fall a little bit in this draft, probably to the Raiders. And we want to see if the Raiders snatches him up here. Offensive tackle is a good look. I like Abdul Carter as well. I've mocked Will Campbell to them a few times. Well, let's do that. I want to see how far Shedeur Sanders falls, and I think a lot of people will want to see that too. So, now I'm on the clock with the Carolina Panthers. Looking at what's happening right now on the board after our pick, T-Mac went to the Patriots, Abdul Carter to the Jaguars, Will Johnson to the Raiders, Starks to the Jets, and now I'm on the board. Defensive line and DB is their team needs per PFF, but we could also go a lot of different ways with this if we're thinking outside the box. I think defensive line is very deep in this draft. I like Mason Graham. I think we got a good talent there. I don't see him falling too much farther than this in the real NFL draft. I'm looking at what's available on the board. Will Johnson coming off really hinders their ability to be fluid with this pick, and we're not trading in these scenarios. Let's go Mason Graham for the Carolina Panthers. I'm on the clock again for the Saints. The Saints are on the clock. Wide receiver is a huge need. Tight end, pretty much anything to help the passing game. If you remember, with all those injuries and what they had after Chris Olave, not looking good. Luther Burden. Once you select him off the board, the wide receiver spot tears down a good bit. You're looking at tight end. We got some good tight ends at the top of this class, but it's also very deep. You can get a good tight end in the second round, third round. Very deep class. Defensive line's pretty deep as well. I think Luther Burden here at 9 for the Saints, playing with Chris Olave. I think that's going to be a good marriage. He's good at creating separation. He's good at really getting it after the catch. And he was productive early in his career. Sophomore year was looking good production-wise as well. Luther Burden come on down to the Saints. Bears are on the clock. You look at the RB needs, you look at Ashton, Jeanty, but you got to pipe it down a little bit with that because we got some needs to look at. When I look at the edge spot, it's pretty deep. You can always trade back into the first round, the back end. Tight end, you can wait a little bit. You're good there. I see Tyler Warren just creeping up the ranks. He's ranked 12th. He was around like the 18 range, 22 range a few weeks ago here on the PFF mock. That's one thing following these. You get to see how they're changing the rankings because you're doing this every day. When I look at this, I think offensive line. Josh Simmons is climbing up the board here for PFF. That means he's grading well. That means he's looking good. And on top of that, before the injury, he was good. He was a monster. I think getting him for Caleb Williams and getting an extra body on the offensive line and just figuring it out from there is a good idea. I think Josh Simmons coming off the board for the Bears. 49ers are now on the clock. Tackle, guard, offensive line pretty much, defensive line. When I look at defensive line, I'm seeing edge on the board. Defensive line is more stacked for the back end of the first round right now. So a little bit of a reach there. But when you're looking at offensive tackle, you got Calvin Banks looking at you. You got some teams needing tackle behind you. It looks like a good look for the Niners. However, if you want to get sexy with it, looking at what's on the board here overall, you do have edge. You do have some wide receivers to look at, but you just spent a first round at wide receiver. You're kind of good there. Benjamin Morrison's climbing up the ranks for them. They must be watching my channel. Michael Williams is falling down their ranks a little bit. Kenneth Grant, Shedeur Sanders. I think the best route here is probably to just get your offensive tackle and just roll with it and let that run roll. Now the Cowboys are on the clock. Luther Burden's off the board. Running back is vastly deep here. You can go multiple different positions here to patch things up. Tackle just had a run. And one of the reasons why the Niners made that pick is because the Cowboys were drafting behind them. And they wanted to make sure to deplete the tackle spot here. You can catch tackle in the second round. Maybe in this portion of the draft you trade back, because you do have a wealth of tackles here. Here in the back end of the first round, early second round. Maybe that's a possibility for the Cowboys. Ashton, Jeanty, sexy. A little bit rich for the blood there. He had some injuries at tight end. They do like to draft Penn State players. I just don't see that happening. I do like Nick Scorton, but let's look at a reach here. Let's look at something the Cowboys could do that could really throw us off, because that's one thing the Cowboys do is throw us off. Mika Egbuka paired with CeeDee Lamb could be a good get for them. I think that's a little bit early. He's climbing the board. He's climbing the rankings. Look at the ADP versus the ranks. He was not that high a week and a half ago. I like Michael Williams. I think that'd be a good edge to add to the mix for what they got. Looking at what came off the board, Jalen Walker to the Miami Dolphins, Scorton to the Colts. So we got some tight ends falling down the board here. Tight end was a position of need, and a lot of people mocking one of those two top tight ends to the Colts. Now the Falcons are on the clock, and I do like to draft and mock Jalen Walker to the Falcons. That trips me up a little bit. I do not like going wide receiver to the Falcons. I feel like we're pretty deep there. Looking what's available at edge up here on the board, it's getting thinned out. It's thinned out right now. So we may have to just pull the trigger on my man here, Benjamin Morrison. He's climbing the board anyways. The rank matches the ADP here. His ADP is at 20, but he's been climbing the ranks, and he's one of my guys. Let's draft him up to the Falcons. Let's do that. We got to change here. Now the Cardinals are on the clock. Offensive tackle is an important position of need. Kenneth Grant has fell to them. Just going down here to the rankings, we got Tyleik Williams. Huge body for them to draft. But I think Kenneth Grant coming off the board here at 16 to the Cardinals is a good look. The computer for PFF drafts a Mika Egbuka to the Bengals. I'm getting another wide receiver. So in this scenario, maybe something happens with T. Higgins, or we're just jacking up on talent at wide receiver to help Joe Burrow in his offense. But Seattle's on the clock. Offensive line, edge, linebacker. So linebacker zapped up. Edge is on the board. Shedeur Sanders right there for the taking. That's a position to look at. Guard and center, I'm going to let you know that it's not top heavy enough to where it's going to leak into the first round. Maybe unless we get some big time winners at the Senior Bowl, at the Combine, that might happen. But right now, it's not looking good for that. When we throw in offensive tackle, you do have the Missouri kid, and you do have Josh Connerly to look at. When I really think about this, I think your best value is just to get your edge. Just get another edge. Just have a good slew of edges to get blows. And then when it comes time for contracts here in a few years, you're good to go. I think Shedeur Sanders coming on down to the Seattle Seahawks. The Bucs are on the board. And another thing by that pick is you got some teams behind you that need edge, and you just zapped up the player pool, and now they're looking at like a Jack Sawyer. Now they're looking at other positions. Linebackers zapped up. However, DB is a fun position right now. DB, because my man Barron's down the ranks a little bit. I like him. I like Trey Amos. I like James Pierce. I think he's going to be a riser. He's falling down the PFF ranks. I think if you want to go edge and you're really worried about that, I think around here for a James Pierce might be a look in the back end of the first round. I like Barron. I like Trey Amos. I like them. I think for the Bucs here, I'm going to draft our guy, James Pierce, throw him in the first round. Now, before our picks, we got some sexy ones here. So, Ashton Jeanty to the Broncos. They had some issues at running back. They've had some injuries at running back. That makes sense. Shedeur Sanders to the Steelers. How do you feel about that, Steeler fans? How do you feel about that? Our Steeler drafts have been pretty sexy for the last 3 ones with Ashton Jeanty and other players falling to them. Tyler Warren, who I've mocked a few times to the Chargers, going to the Chargers. And now this team is getting nasty in the passing game. Loveland was another option for them, considering the Michigan connection, and that might happen. But Tyler Warren, a good get there for the Chargers. Moving on down here to the Packers, we got a tackle falling into their lap. We also got Jack Sawyer, a good edge. Matthew Golden's ranked up there. And they got a good carousel effect at wide receiver. I think they like the money ball that position. I think edge is the position you do not want to shy away from. It's the position pool right now is starting to zap up. I think that's a good look. And depending on what Jack Sawyer does on Monday night is where his stock is going to go. Let's draft him right now to the Packers. I do have a history, but it's a long time ago of drafting Buckeyes. Now we're looking at the Vikings here. Running back, interior offensive line, defensive line. Defensive line with Tyleik Williams is probably the pick to make here. Unless we go on down, we got some tackles. Barron's available. Colston Loveland's falling down the board. That's probably the reasonable pick. The sexy pick is Aaron Hampton. Running back's going to get zapped up eventually for them. Like, Aaron Jones is not going to be the man there forever. But I believe Tyleik Williams would be the spot for them. Barron goes to the Texans here at 25. And now I'm on the clock with the Rams. Rams have a need at tackle. And we're going to pull the trigger on the Missouri kid right now to get him off the board. The Commanders are up now. We got Matthew Golden at wide receiver. But we got some tackles available. This is time for the tackle run. We did pick up a tight end in last year's draft. So it looks like Colston Loveland might fall down the board a little ways. How much farther, I do not know. But they could make that pick due to the talent. The talent outweighs a lot of other players here that are on the board at the top. Definitely. I definitely see getting the offensive line more talent is a good look for them and something you should think about. Colston Loveland, though. Talent per position, per get, might be the pick here if you want to switch things up. I think when you're looking at the pool here at tackle, it is drying up. There's some tackles I like that shouldn't be falling to the second, but it's drying up. I think we're going to pull the trigger here on Josh Connerly. Let the draft roll. Ravens draft Aaron Hampton. Aaron Hampton, Derrick Henry, and now Justice Hill and company. They're probably got to find new jobs. Aaron Hampton backing up Derrick Henry to start things off in his career and probably eventually taking over. That is something to pay attention to. Another big running back for them to sludge it out between the tackles. I like that. Ravel going to the Bills. They drafting DB there, and now the Eagles are on the clock. You can go DB. PFF has that as the position of need, but they drafted DB pretty heavy last year. You got a player coming to you off the board. We had injuries at tight end. We got contracts coming up. We got a position of need here. You can use 2 tight ends on the field. Tight end is a position you can develop. I think Colston Loveland to the Eagles is a smart pick here. Also, do not think him falling to the Chiefs is something I want happening too. I think I look at that and I look at Colston Loveland. I'm drafting him to the Eagles, and they're doing a luxury pick. Not a prediction pick, but a luxury pick. TJ Sanders to the Chiefs. And I think in my last mock, I actually mocked him to the Chiefs. So PFF rolled with that. Final pick off the board. And interior offensive line, edge, linebacker. Let's look at the edges. Let's go down. Landon Jackson, Prince is available. Jock Campbell is available. We've been drafting those guys a lot to the Detroit Lions. Just going down the board a little bit because this is a team that will go rogue a little bit. They will. Going up here, I think Trey Amos. I think going Trey Amos, always getting more talent at DB. That's just something teams want to do. He's fallen to their lap. There we go. There's the simulator. The big story here is Shedeur Sanders falling in this draft, seeing where he goes, and he went to the Steelers. Ashton, Jeanty to the Broncos. This was a fun draft. This one had some different scenarios, and we're going to do this again with the AFC, and we'll do this multiple times, just changing the sliders and the variables that could happen in these drafts, making them as crazy as possible. But this draft, not too horrible. It's also funner to do this way. That being said, let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.